You think you're stuck because you're doing something wrong. You think you're missing some secret strategy, some untapped genius buried in a podcast or a self-help book you haven't read yet. But let me tell you the truth. You're not stuck because you don't know enough. You're stuck because you're too comfortable. Comfort is a liar. It whispers that safety is the goal, that peace means silence. That rest is earned only when nothing hurts. But here's what most people don't realize. Comfort doesn't mean progress. Comfort doesn't mean alignment. In fact, most of the time, comfort is just a polished version of avoidance. Let's go deeper. We're wired, biologically, to seek stability. It's ancient survival. Your brain doesn't want you to feel stress, so it directs you to repeat what's familiar, what doesn't feel like a threat. But that wiring was meant for running from lions, not for building a life worth living. And so what happens is, you begin to make decisions not based on what will grow you, but based on what will protect your ego. You dodge rejection, avoid feedback, procrastinate on goals, all in the name of feeling okay. But feeling okay isn't the same as living. You wake up and the days start to blur. You feel uninspired, maybe even bitter, and you wonder why your life feels so small. It's because you've been feeding your need for certainty instead of feeding your hunger for meaning. And let me say this clearly, there is no growth without discomfort, none, zero. You don't become strong in the gym without tearing muscle. You don't become wise without confronting your own ignorance. You don't become brave without walking straight into fear. And yet, we avoid discomfort like it's the enemy. We say things like, I just don't feel ready yet, or I need more clarity. No, you don't. You need to move. Clarity comes through action, not before it. Read that again. Clarity is not a prerequisite for growth. It is the result of movement. But most people would rather be confused in comfort than uncomfortable in motion. I get it. Discomfort is messy. It's that voice that says, what if I fail? It's that knot in your stomach before you speak your truth. It's the sting of criticism when you finally put your work out into the world. And you've been taught to avoid all of that. You were taught that discomfort equals danger, but discomfort is just a signal that something meaningful is happening. Discomfort means you're stretching. It means you're doing something your past self couldn't. It means evolution is in progress. But instead, what do? We retreat. We binge content instead of creating. We stay in relationships that are convenient but dead. We take jobs that drain us just to avoid the unknown, and then we wonder why we feel stuck. You're not stuck. You've just built your life around not being uncomfortable. Think about that. You've been training your brain every day to associate challenge with danger. So when opportunity shows up in disguise, because it always does, you ignore it. Why? Because it doesn't feel good. But growth rarely feels good in the moment. Growth often feels like chaos, like uncertainty, like effort that isn't being noticed. But that's the work. That's the soil where transformation happens. Not in the spotlight, in the shadows, in the quiet, ugly, uncomfortable places. And if you're honest with yourself, that's why you haven't moved forward. Because deep down, you've been prioritizing feeling good now over being fulfilled later . You've made short-term comfort your compass, and now you're wondering why your life feels off course. You've settled for comfort zones that have turned into cages. Let me be real with you. There is no version of your dream life that doesn't require you to get uncomfortable. None. There is no confidence without courage, no strength without struggle, no elevation without tension. You can't Netflix your way into a purpose-driven life. You can't scroll your way into transformation. It takes fire. It takes friction. It takes facing yourself fully and without filter. So ask yourself, where in your life have you chosen comfort over growth? Where have you said, I can't, when you really meant I won't? Where are you hiding behind ease and calling it peace? Be honest, because you can't change what you won't confront. And when you start to feel that resistance rise, that urge to retreat, to avoid, to delay, don't run. Lean in. That discomfort, that's the doorway. That's the exact signal that you're on the edge of something real. And the moment you start building the habit of stepping into that space again and again, you become unstoppable. Not because the fear goes away, but because you've trained yourself to move anyway, So no, you're not stuck. You're just comfortable. And if you want more clarity, more purpose, more life, then you've got to choose discomfort on purpose. Every day, in small ways, in big moments, over and over again. Because the life you want doesn't live in the comfort zone. It lives in the space you're afraid to step into. And now you know. You keep saying you're stuck. But what you're really doing is waiting. You're waiting for someone to come tap you on the shoulder and say, now is your time. You're waiting for an invitation, for validation, for circumstances to shift just enough to give you permission to move forward. And that's the real reason you feel like you're not going anywhere, because you've outsourced your power. And listen, I get it. At some point in your life, someone taught you that power comes from outside of you. That authority belongs to titles, to systems, to the voices that are louder than yours. So you learn to shrink, to comply, to wait for signs. But here's the truth. The more you wait for someone else to give you power, the more you teach yourself that you never had any to begin with. And that belief is what's keeping you stuck. You don't need more time. You don't need more approval. You don't need another green light from people who don't even know the vision you're carrying. You need to reclaim the power you gave away, the power to decide, to act, to own your direction without apology. The problem is, most people are addicted to external validation. We've been trained from an early age to look outside of ourselves for the scoreboard. Likes, followers, praise, grades, promotions. We've been conditioned to believe that our worth is confirmed when someone else says, good job. But here's the issue: when your self-belief is built on other people's reactions, your identity becomes fragile. Because what happens when the applause stops? What happens when the likes don't come in? What happens when they don't understand what you're building? You break, you hesitate, you spiral. Why? Because your power was never really yours. You handed it off to the crowd, but hear me, if someone else can give you power, they can take it away. And real power is unshakable because it doesn't depend on the noise around you. It's rooted in your decision to own who you are and where you're going, even when no one claps. You've been told to wait for readiness. You've been told to build confidence before you take action. But confidence doesn't come before action. It's built through it. You don't wait for power to show up. You build it every time you choose to move forward without certainty. And this is where it gets uncomfortable, because taking back your power means you stop blaming other people. You stop blaming your parents, your boss, your ex, your past. You stop pointing fingers at everything outside of you and start asking, what can I do now with what I have? And I know that's not always easy. It's easier to blame than to take ownership. It's easier to say, I can't because of them, than to admit, I won't because I'm afraid. But the moment you stop waiting and start owning, everything changes. Because the truth is, you've always had choices. Even when life knocked you down, even when the odds were stacked against you, you still had the power to decide what came next. You still had the ability to shift, to pivot, to rise. You don't need a perfect plan. You need to stop handing over the steering wheel of your life to fear, because let's be honest, that's what this is really about. You're not waiting on people. You're not waiting on timing. You're waiting for your fear to disappear, and that's never going to happen. Fear doesn't vanish. It adapts. It disguises itself as logic, as caution, as being realistic. But make no mistake, fear is the voice that tells you to sit back down, even when everything in you wants to rise. Taking your power back doesn't mean you feel fearless. It means you move with fear in the room. It means you stop negotiating with your limitations and start aligning with your potential. It means you stop asking for permission to be who you already know you are. Because here's the kicker, no one can see your vision like you can. No one else was given your exact set of gifts, your perspective, your story. And if you're waiting for someone else to see it first, you'll be waiting forever. Sometimes you have to be the first to believe. Sometimes you have to go first. You have to be the one to say, this matters, I matter, and I'm moving forward whether anyone claps or not. And when you do that, when you stop outsourcing your power and start claiming it, people notice. The world doesn't move for the loudest person. It moves for the one who walks with conviction, the one who's done playing small, the one who doesn't need a stage to act like they belong on one. You've spent too much time trying to be chosen. It's time to choose yourself, and if you're waiting for a sign, this is it. The moment you stop asking for permission is the moment you become unstoppable. You're not just stuck because of what's going on inside your head, you're stuck because of what's around you. We love to talk about mindset, about discipline, about willpower, and those things matter. But what we often ignore is the silent influence of our environment. The people you spend time with, the content you consume, the routines you follow, all of that is either feeding your future or feeding your fear. Most people underestimate this. They think they can stay motivated while constantly surrounding themselves with negativity. They think they can stay focused while living in chaos. They think they can break out of mediocrity while being surrounded by people who normalize it. But the truth is, your environment is speaking to you every single day, not in words, but in habits. And it's shaping you whether you're aware of it or not. Think about it. You can't plant a seed in toxic soil and expect it to grow strong. The seed might have potential, in fact. It might carry the DNA for something beautiful, something powerful, but if the soil is dry, if the sunlight never hits it, if it's never watered, it won't matter. The problem wasn't the seed. The problem was where it was planted. And for a lot of you, that's what's happening. You've got the potential, the talent, the dream, but you're stuck in an environment that's draining you instead of developing you. You're trying to stay inspired while constantly being surrounded by cynicism. You're trying to believe in yourself while surrounded by people who play small and call it wisdom. You're trying to rise in a space where no one's reaching higher than the floor. That kind of environment will suffocate you. Now, I'm not just talking about the obvious stuff, people who hate on you or bring you down. That's easy to spot. I'm talking about the subtle things, the friend who never celebrates your wins, the conversations that always drift toward complaining, the habits you've built that feel comfortable but leave you empty. That's the stuff that silently convinces you that growth is unrealistic, that success is for other people. That dreaming is naive. But let's be honest, you've normalized it, you've adapted to it, you've said, that's just how it is. And now you're stuck not because you're not capable, but because you've adjusted to dysfunction like it's your destiny. And if you want to change your life, the first thing you need to do is change what surrounds you. I don't mean cutting people off recklessly. I don't mean running away from discomfort. I mean being radically intentional about what you let into your world. About who gets access to your energy, about what ideas you feed your mind, because every conversation, every scroll, every habit is casting a vote for the person you're becoming. Your brain is constantly adapting to the environment it's in. That's called neuroplasticity. You're literally wiring your mind based on what it's exposed to. That means if all you feed it is fear, doubt, gossip, and distraction, don't be surprised when all you produce is confusion, hesitation, and frustration. But the moment you begin shifting your surroundings even slightly, you change your default settings. You start seeing possibility where you once saw limits. You start thinking differently because the inputs have changed. And when your inputs change, your outcomes change. Now I get it, some of you feel trapped. You say, but this is just the life I've got. These are the people I've known for years. And I hear you. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's necessary. Growth doesn't always mean leaving everything behind. Sometimes it means drawing new boundaries. Sometimes it means limiting time with people who don't bring the energy you need. Sometimes it means building new spaces, even digitally, that remind you of what's possible. There's no excuse anymore. You have access to books, podcasts, mentors, communities, even if they're virtual, that can completely reshape the way you think. You don't have to be in a perfect environment to grow. You just need to stop marinating in one that's killing your fire. Look at your life like a garden. If you're not blooming, Don't just blame the seed. Ask what's poisoning the soil. Ask what's blocking the light. Ask what you're watering every day, because you're always watering something and whatever you water grows. Are you feeding your doubt or your discipline? Are you reinforcing fear or building faith? Are you staying connected to people who challenge you or people who secretly enjoy seeing you stuck? Let's stop pretending it doesn't matter. It does. If you're constantly around people who settle, you'll start to call settling success. If you're constantly listening to content that numbs you, you'll confuse distraction with peace. If your routines are built to avoid discomfort, you'll think stillness is the same thing as strength. It's not. Your environment has to be designed for the life you want, not the life you're trying to leave behind. Because if you don't build the environment that pushes you forward, you'll default to the one that's keeping you small. And that's a choice even if it doesn't feel like one. You're not stuck. You're surrounded by people, patterns, and places that keep you locked into yesterday when everything in you is screaming for more. So here's the question you've got to ask yourself. Is your environment matching your vision, or is it managing your fear? Because you can't change your life and keep everything around you the same. At some point, something has to shift. And when you start protecting your space like your future depends on it, because it does, everything begins to change. You don't rise alone. You rise with your environment or despite it. Choose wisely. The truth is, you're not as stuck as you are inconsistent. That's a hard thing to admit, but it's the reason progress keeps slipping through your fingers. You don't lack ambition, you start things. You get excited, you make plans, you even put in the work for a while, but then what happens? The excitement fades, the results don't come fast enough, the resistance gets louder, and you hit that invisible wall, not because you failed, but because you stopped. Most people aren't stuck in the beginning, they're stuck in the middle, and that middle, that quiet, gritty, unglamorous part of the process, that's where your character is revealed. That's where most dreams die. Not in failure, but in fatigue, in boredom, in the everyday repetition of doing what's necessary without applause, without validation, without proof that it's working yet. You've convinced yourself that if it doesn't happen fast, it must not be working. But growth is rarely visible at first. The seeds you plant don't sprout overnight. The transformation you're looking for is often happening underground, out of sight, in silence. But because you can't see it, you assume it's not there. So you pivot, you switch paths, you start over again, and again, and again, and that's the pattern. You keep uprooting your progress because you confuse discomfort with being off track. You think if it feels heavy, it must be wrong. But the weight you're feeling, that's the work of becoming. That's the internal shift that precedes every external win. But here's what no one tells you. Quitting always feels rational. It feels like self-preservation. Like wisdom, like maybe this wasn't the right thing after all. Your mind starts offering you exits. It says, let's try something easier. It says, this wasn't meant for you. It says, other people are doing it better. And if you haven't trained yourself to recognize that voice, you'll believe it every time. You'll call it intuition, when really, it's just old fear in a new costume. See, we live in a culture that glorifies the start and celebrates the finish, but it ignores the long, grinding middle part. That's the part no one posts about. That's the part where nothing is sexy, it's just you, yourself. Doubt and a decision to keep showing up. No spotlight, no breakthrough, just the discipline of staying in the game when every part of you wants to walk off the field. And it's not that you don't want it. You do, but wanting something isn't enough. Everyone wants something. Few are willing to endure the silence and the repetition required to build it. You've got to learn the difference between interest and commitment. Interest fades when things get hard, commitment deepens, interest looks for a way out, commitment finds a way through. This is where emotional maturity comes in, the ability to stay when it's not exciting. The ability to continue when no one's cheering, the willingness to be faithful to the process, even when results are late to the party. And let me say something clearly, there is nothing wrong with you because you're tired. Tired doesn't mean unworthy. Confused doesn't mean incapable. The presence of resistance doesn't mean the absence of growth. In fact, it's often the opposite. If it's hard, you're probably doing something right. And yet, we've become so addicted to the feeling of new that we sabotage anything that demands staying. We chase beginnings because they give us a high, a burst of hope, a rush of potential, but mastery. Mastery is quiet. It's found in the 100th repetition, in the day you wanted to give up but didn't, in the patience to keep planting even when the harvest feels miles away. That's where the real you is formed. You don't become who you're meant to be by starting over every time it gets hard. You become that person by staying through the hard, by outlasting your own doubt, by refusing to abandon the process just because the pace isn't what you hoped for. If you're stuck, ask yourself, what was I doing before I stopped? Most of the time, you weren't failing. You were just expecting success to come on your timeline, and when it didn't, you assumed it meant it wouldn't come at all. So you shifted, you changed the plan, you started fresh. But every time you do that, you delay your breakthrough, because the breakthrough isn't in the restart, it's in the staying. The people you admire, the ones who seem to have figured it out, they didn't succeed because they never struggled. They succeeded because they didn't stop in the struggle. They embraced the boring. They committed to the long road. They stayed when no one noticed. They built when no one clapped. They kept going until the result didn't have a choice but to show up. And that can be you if you stop quitting. Stop letting your emotions make permanent decisions. Stop letting the lack of applause convince you to abandon what you started. Stop walking away every time it gets uncomfortable and calling it wisdom. Sometimes wisdom is staying, sometimes power is persistence. Because you're not stuck, you're in the middle, and the middle is where everything changes if you don't leave it too soon. So here's your challenge: don't restart, don't retreat, stay in it. Because what you want is on the other side of not quitting.